that little kid on the hospital trolley. You take him to Tony Hawk and he like stuns up. He's like, "Whoa, Tony Hawk, I'm much better now," even though it was like critical condition. Just like doctors and that trying to chase you and that.
Kids just come out of fucking intensive care for chemotherapy or something. Oh, Tony Hawk! Put the sound. Here we go.
Wow, Tony Hawk.
It's the token Tony Hawk there. I'm fine now.
My stage 4 cancer's gone now. Bye.
I used to love sketching the Rottweiler around that little neighbourhood.
Aye. Oh, what? Fucking
Anyway, enough about Tony Hawks. Do you want to get into today's episode?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hello and welcome back to Necrofancy Podcast. Today's episode is on Tony Hawk.
No, I didn't see that one coming. That caught us off guard.
Here he is, Tony Hawk.
His name is... No, I'm not going to do it. So this one's just going to be a little filler episode while we put some research into our episode after this. So we decided to go nice and light, keep it nice and breezy, and talk about torture methods. Specifically some of our favourites.
It just sound like a fucking devil.
What? Sometimes it's just fun to say people get fucked up, man.
Don't go into the torture room. It's in there.
I've told you.
Torture.
Didn't get in.
Mind you, I'm fucking business, that's why.
Some shut your mouth. I was about that.
Life-size Genghis Khan in there. What the fuck are you looking at?
Damn. So yeah, just a nice little breezy episode full of some nice little fun content for you. So who wants to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Go for it, man.
Sweet. So this one's a relatively modern method of torture. It's called white torture. So this is a type of psychological torture that includes extreme sensory deprivation and isolation, and it essentially involves putting a prisoner in a completely white and soundproof room. This type of torture is designed to deprive all of the senses, and as stated in the name, everything is white. This can go as far to include the walls, the floor, the ceiling of the prisoner's cell, as well as the occupant's clothes and food. The room is often soundproofed so that the occupant can hear nothing, and guards wear padded shoes so as to not make any noise. The prisoner cannot talk to anyone, nor can they hear anything except for themselves. The lighting is designed so that it does not cast any shadows. Although it may not be the most common or popular form of torture, there are many adverse effects that come with it. Carrying out this type of torture makes the detainee lose personal identity through long periods of isolation, and it can even cause hallucinations. Which, to be fair, you'd probably want if you're in there by yourself.
Oh man, I'd love that.
Hello,
Like,
White Jim.
Just a telly in your head, really, innit? I'm watching the day. It's fucking put Sky Sports on.
Oh, look at that. It's fucking Juventus versus the Warriors. That's
Good old bargain hunt.
It's the Lakers versus me da. That's not me da.
Shirt
What's
off.
me dad look like? Yeah. Just me da on the court.
Come on, lads.
Fucking creative
Let's have it.
brony. Oh, hey, lads.
In Iran, white torture has been practiced on political prisoners. Most political prisoners who experience this type of torture are journalists who are held in the Evin prison. I believe I'm pronouncing that right.
Mate, Iran fucking hate journalists.
Oh yeah, they know.
I know what it is. Every time you look on the news, there's a Western journalist detained in Iran.
Yeah, it's just like, he's not coming back, is he?
You know, it is, I'm trying to read this out as best I can, but I'm in the back room and it's like a fucking sweatbox in here, and I can't open the window because me street doesn't know how to be fucking quiet. So I'm sitting there with my shirt off,
All the
wearing
time.
combat shorts.
Subtle Fred reference.
Sitting there in my combat shorts, wiping myself down with a t-shirt like I'm some sort of fat fucking southern plantation owner.
Would help if the room was all white.
I've got a fucking case of the Vapors. I do declare that I'm fucking wham. Oh, it's
You
too
sound
much.
wham.
I fucking mate.
Someone sounds wham.
Anyway, back to torture. Amir Fakhravar, an Iranian white room prisoner, was tortured at Evin prison for 8 months in 2004. According to the chairman of the Centre for Human Rights in Iran, Hadi Ghameni, carrying out such tortures in Evin is not necessarily authorised by the Iranian government. To be fair, now, before I read this out, I feel like that's bullshit.
Sounds like bullshit. Sounds like just one of them statements you have to make. Nah, I haven't got a clue.
Don't condone torturing people who want to report the news about our corrupt regime. Honestly,
I don't know.
it's just we're not like that.
It's like a guy chatting to a fucking girl in the club, innit? No, honestly, I'm just not like other lads. I just don't torture journalists.
No, I'm just not like other Islamic nations, you know. I didn't torture Western journalists.
Honestly, I actively invite journalists in. I say, come here, you'll be totally fine.
You're the only one who does. No, it's not me, man.
It's how a Tony just looks like us.
President Ahmadinejad, can you comment on the use of white torture rooms? He just like stands there behind the podium, puts his fingers together, and starts like twiddling his heels. I'll never tell. White torture can include prolonged periods of solitary confinement, the use of continual illumination to deprive sleep. Ahmed Shahid, the UN Special Human Rights Reporter in Iran, mentioned in a statement that human rights activist Vahid Askari was psychologically tortured by means of long-term detention in solitary confinement and with threats to arrest, torture or rape his family members. He was also reportedly tortured with severe beatings for the purpose of eliciting confessions, which it is a bit fucking far. If I'm just gonna speak freely here,
Took it too far.
it's a bit much.
Yeah.
It's approaching take me ball in territory.
I think it's approaching no, get your own ball. I'm putting mine in, then we'll play territory.
It's approaching. I'm stood outside the UN embassy with me ball.
And guess where it's gone? It's not gone in there. An Amnesty International report in 2004 documented evidence of white torture on Amir Abbas Fakhrivar by the Revolutionary Guards, which is a branch of the Iranian Armed Forces. According to the report, which called his case the first known example of white torture in Iran, claimed that his cells had no windows and the walls in his clothes were white. His meals consisted of white rice on white plates. To use the toilet, he had to put a white piece of paper under the door. He was forbidden to speak, and the guards reportedly wore shoes that muffled sound. In a telephone call to the Human Rights Watch in 2004, Iranian journalist Ebrahim Nabavi made the following claim regarding white torture. Since I left Evin, I have not been able to sleep without sleeping pills. It is terrible. The loneliness never leaves you, long after you are free. Every door that is closed on you. This is why we call it white torture. They get what they want without having to hit you. They know enough about you to control the information that you get. They can make you believe that the president has resigned, that they have your wife, that someone you trust has told them lies about you. You begin to break, and once you break, they have control, and then you begin to confess.
It's like the complete opposite of like normal PTSD, where there's like loads going on. Like people come back from war zones and like obviously they're suffering because of all the noise and all the like shit going on around them. It's just the opposite. There's like absolutely nothing.
Dead silence though.
Yeah. It's weird that it kind of has the same effect.
It is kind of weird how like nothing happening can have the same sort of like sensory effect. Like it's weird how sensory deprivation can lead to the same kind of effects as a sensory overload.
Yeah. Makes sense in a way.
I mean, obviously PTSD is a traumatic thing, so like obviously if you're locked in there, not talking to anybody, you're eventually gonna get a bit, nuts. So I suppose that in itself is traumatic.
I just wish Eiffel 65 came out with a new song.
What?
Everything's white. He's rice on his plate.
I didn't quite get the reference there. Alright, Norman, we're still on the same episode.
First strike. Norman, you're on your first strike.
Yeah. That'll be good.
You get 3 per episode. If you get 2 consecutive fucking strikes an episode, you're done. You're out.
You get white roomed. Next episode's just white rooming the shit out of Norman.
You come to man, I'm going to repaint this back room for you, and you're getting locked in here. Windows are gone. Fucking all the furniture's gone. There's plenty of cardboard in there you can play with. Next up, I'm going back to a very fun time to not be religious. It's the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
Established.
Norman. Oh, fuck my leg.
2 strikes.
Oh, wait.
Fuck off. Second strike.
It's like you're sponsored by the Monty Python.
Do you know John Cleese?
No.
You're trying to sell a 50-year-old film.
He's with you, door.
You know what it is? If John Cleese became your new Hull-based dad, I would watch Monty Python.
I'll
I'd come round and watch it with him.
If you get everyone to watch all the Monty Pythons.
I'll watch Monty Python if you make John Cleese your dad. There you are.
Aye, there you go. Fair enough. If I can come down you as next time I see
How old's
you,
he
have a
now?
pint.
I think I've still got time.
Probably the same age
dunno.
as your father, to be honest with you.
Probably fucking days away from death. I've googled it. Joppin Kless.
Who? Joppin.
Liverpool manager. It's a Liverpool manager, isn't it?
Joppin Kless. He's 80 now, so yeah, get moving on.
I've got time. There's a
Got
chance.
Twitter, tweet him. Will you be my dad?
At John
Straight
Cleese.
away.
Yeah.
17 separate accounts spamming John Cleese posts.
Why is
Will
this
you be me
25
dad?
want to be me
Will
son?
you be me dad? Excuse me, John Cleese. Will you be me dad?
John Cleese, my friends will not watch Monty Python unless you are my dad.
John Cleese, will you be me dad? Ask Michael Peel in the field, be me uncle.
Tweeted by John Cleese, dad, please.
Anyway, Spanish
Aye.
Inquisition.
Spanish Inquisition, yeah.
This was established in 1478 by Catholic monarchs Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile.
Fucking bad. I like that. Read that again, the first one.
Ferdinand II of Aragon
Class.
and Isabella I of Castile.
Class, but not as class, the first one.
It's not Aragon, it's Aragon.
I know, but still.
Yeah, close enough. It was intended to maintain Catholic orthodoxy in the kingdoms, and the Inquisition was originally intended primarily to identify heretics among those who converted from Judaism and Islam to Catholicism. Just putting out there, heretics are probably some of the most soundest people, because heresy is fun.
Put that on a t-shirt.
The regulation of the faith of newly converted Catholics was intensified after the royal decrees issued in 1492 and 1502, ordering Muslims and Jews to convert to Catholicism or leave Castile. The Inquisition was not definitively abolished until 1834. Now, rather than delve into every single act of torture that they would use to elicit confessions, I just picked two that I feel quite easy to read out, and you can just visualise it in your head quite easily. So the first one is the Strappado. Strappado is a form of torture in which a victim is suspended in the air by a rope attached to their hands which have been tied behind their back. There are at least 3 variants of this torture. In the first, the victim has his arms tied behind his back. A large rope is then tied to his wrists and passed over a beam or a hook on the roof. The torturer pulls on this rope until the victim is hanging from his arms. Since the hands are tied behind the back, this action causes extreme pain and possible dislocation of the arms. The full weight of the subject's body is then supported by the extended and internally rotated shoulder sockets. While the technique shows no external injuries, it caused long-term nerve, ligament or tendon damage. And I suppose, the bigger you are, the heavier you are, that's probably going to be worse.
Yeah.
Because I'm a solid fucking 17 stone at the minute, so my shoulders are coming straight out. I'm not going to be well.
I'm fucking Mr. Potato Head.
The second variation is similar to the first, but with a series of drops from a suspended height. In addition to the damage caused by the suspension, the repeated drops caused major stress to the extended arms, leading to broken shoulders. In the third variant, the victim's hands are tied to the front, and the victim is also hung from the hands, but his ankles are tied and a heavy weight is attached to them. This will cause pain and possible damage not only to the arms but to the legs and hips. This variant was also known as squashation. The next one I have for you is the Judas Cradle. The Judas Cradle consisted of a pyramid-shaped wooden device, and the victim was placed on top of the pyramid. His or her hands and legs would be tied so that the weight could not be shifted elsewhere. The feet were actually tied with each other with the purpose of increasing the pain whenever the feet were moved. The pointed edge of the pyramid was then slowly inserted into the anus or vagina of the victim, and the torture could continue from a few hours to entire days.
Oh my god.
The duration of the torture, however, also varied from victim to victim depending on various factors other than their own ability to bear the pain. For instance, sometimes a weight was added to the victim's legs which increased the pain but also resulted in a quick death. And other times, oil was put onto the device which again increased the pain of torture but did nothing to hasten the process. So that was a brief little insight into the Spanish Inquisition. Fuck Catholicism. Putting that out there. Just gonna put that on a shirt. Fuck Catholicism. It's been one of the worst religions I've had. Who wants to take over before someone files a complaint against us?
Shall I go for it, Norm? Shall I do a little quick?
Yeah, I got for it.
Fucking definitely kind of post this one on the Share Your Podcast group.
No, can we
Oh,
fucking
no.
shit on a good 10 religions so far? It's fucking 20 minutes in. I'm gonna do 2 at this point. I'm gonna do like the relatively small ones, and then I'll tag Norm in. So I'm gonna do a little overview of some of the torture methods, which I think we've spoke about before with the rape of Nanking. Were we all together when we talked about that, or was it just me and you, Alex?
I think it was just me and you on Xbox.
Yeah, I think so. Do you know about the rape of Nanking, Norm, or not?
I've heard of it.
So, for anyone who doesn't, it's the invasion of China by Japan in World War II, and it's known as the rape of Nanking. Specifically, is known as history's forgotten Holocaust, because there was so many people who died at the hands of the Japanese army. So they literally just came in and massacred people, massacred cities, just brutally tortured people. And some of the torture methods are probably too grim for me to even go into detail on. It probably serves people to go and look into it. This is how bad it was. The most notable author on the rape of Nanking was called Iris Chang, and she was like a young American journalist who went into Nanking some years later to kind of get all the details of what happened, because it wasn't a well-known thing at the time. So she did all of this research, and some of the stuff she found was just horrendous. There was high-ranking officials of the Japanese army would basically get together at the start of the day and say, right, let's hunt down women and children, and see how many we can kill. And at the end of the day, we'll rack them up, and whoever has the most wins. And they were featured on the front of newspapers holding the heads of women and children, and they were apparently given bonus points for killing pregnant women.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, I suppose it's a doubler.
Yeah, it's. Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm not trying. I'm not trying to take the piss. I'm just saying, like, I guess it's like 2 lives that have been wiped out.
It's a different take on the
Japanese
fucking
army.
The Gimli and fucking like a lost competition they have.
Oh,
God!
That's still only counts as one. No, fucking hell, lads.
He's twitching because he's got my accent better than his nervous
system. Oh, fuck me.
So there was apparently some 300,000 people raped, burned, and pillaged in the Chinese capital in 1937, turning it into ruin. And so back to Iris Chang, who was this historian who went through and found all this stuff out. She actually ended up committing suicide in 2004, I believe, because like her findings and all of the research she'd done over the course of years was so psychologically damaging that she couldn't take it anymore and committed suicide. Yeah, like I said, I don't want to push the envelope too much on this one. It's one of those you have to have a kind of like specific mindset to go into and do some research on. What's the unit called again, Alex? I keep forgetting the name.
Unit 731. It was essentially a research facility that carried out experiments on live humans, mainly prisoners of war. So it were mainly Chinese people. I think there was a few Russians, might have been 1 or 2 Americans, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but they were mainly Chinese.
Yeah, that's linked to the sacking of Nanking.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you feel the want and need to do some more research, it is
What
fascinating.
ruin your day?
Yeah, if you don't want to sleep tonight, then it's pretty bad. It's probably some of the worst account of torture and massacre you'll ever read, and it's still not as well known as it should be, probably.
The only exposure to it is Alex, you've seen it, Ip Man.
Oh, is it referencing Ip Man?
Oh, yeah,
I can't remember that. It's been a long time.
I've never really seen Ip Man. I've just seen the six. I know. I think it's Ip Man 4, where he goes to that dojo or whatever it is, and there's like those Imperial Japanese Army soldiers who all know like karate or whatever, and Ip Man goes in there with his Wing Chun and just absolutely
That-
pummels the
Yeah,
fuck out
that's
of
the
people.
first one. It's fucking.
The first one? Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know what the fourth one is. I know the third one, Mike Tyson's in it.
Does he?
Yeah. I think
Mike Tyson loves a fucking cameo, doesn't he?
yeah,
so moving
definitely
on.
recommend fucking Ip Man.
I'll give that a watch. It's been a long time since I've seen Ip Man, but if it's a reference, I'll give it a watch.
It's like halfway through. That's when the Rape of Nanking happens.
Oh,
And they're
Right.
all
Just-
under
can I
like.
just interrupt this podcast to bring
Yeah.
you some breaking news?
What's that?
Joel Schumacher's just died.
Who?
Joel Schumacher.
The fuck's that?
Michael Schumacher? Brother?
Nobody's seen the Batman films with fucking Michael Keaton. or
Yeah,
fucking
right, while it's
Val Kilmer,
interrupted, I'm
whoever
going
it
to tell
was.
me, shut the fuck up, 2 minutes.
Is he gone?
You good? Is he sad? Is he good? Is he related?
He's in
Is he
it.
related to Joe Schumacher?
Try and talk, Alex.
Alex, no? Shut up a sec. Oh, he's crying? Can you hear him? I'm going to ask if I can edit this podcast and put like sounds of crying in. He's crying? It's the fucking witch from Left 4 Dead 2.
Did it slap it?
What you fucking is, bro? Joe Schumacher's just died.
That needs to be a mod for Left 4 Dead. Schumacher. Careful, there's a witch.
I
She's
don't know.
obsessed with Joe Schumacher. Who was
I
he
don't know.
bad than I, mate?
I don't know who he is because I've googled him and all that came up is a Denver, is a school in Denver.
Just come up to her. Excuse me, who's Joe Schumacher? Who's Joe Schumacher?
It was
I can't
God.
wait to hear-
It was Jesus.
Oh, he's
I
back.
can't wait to hear about
Oh,
all this conversation that I missed because my internet's a fucking absolute belly.
Oh my God, you're
We
gonna
need to keep
fucking
that
love
in.
this. You're gonna love that. It was Joe Schumacher. Was he the head teacher of a public school in Denver? That's all that came up on Google.
Fucking Joel Schumacher, the director, he made like all the terrible Batman films.
Are you sure it's Joe Schumacher? Because
Joel T. Schumacher? He's
I thought you were
just
saying
died.
Joe.
No, what was he saying? Joel? Who the fuck's Joe Schumacher apart from the teacher in Denver?
Well, rest in peace. He was a teacher in Denver.
I was thinking
Right.
of like Michael Schumacher's brother.
Why would
Like
a
us.
German?
Yeah,
Why would
Schumacher.
someone who's German have the name Joe?
I think I was just thinking of a man called Joe who makes shoes because you're a Mackham.
Oh no, Jimmy Schumacher's just dead.
Who's he? Just a fucking bloke from Pallion.
He works in Jackie White's.
Fucking hell.
He made the Batman and Robin film with fucking George Clooney and Mr.
Oh,
Arnold
that was him.
Schwarzenegger. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a fucking
I
head
thought that
teacher
was-
of a school in Denver as well.
Which one was Tim Robinson?
Who?
Is it Tim
Oh, he
Robbins?
directed The Lost Boys.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Oh wait, I done this film. I fucking
No.
don't care. So what you on
No,
about?
that-
Fuck him.
No. Oh, what the fuck? He done St. Elmo's Fire? Never seen it.
Oh, I really. Oh, I really like
should-
swallowed me fucking drink up my nose.
She would,
Oh,
she would
God,
drag this.
Oh no, to be fair, Norman, he did do Falling Down with Michael Douglas.
Oh wait, Michael Douglas.
He's got a
Good
right
look, Michael
fucking
Douglas.
knack on.
Good look, Michael Douglas. Good look to you.
Get out, you daft twat! You daft twat!
Right.
How about a panda pop? Panda pop 50 pound.
Should we try and
I'm
wrangle
not
this fucking
bothered.
podcast back on track, or
I'll
should we
fucking
keep
give it a
that?
go.
How about I do
Oh.
this? I'm not bothered.
Not bothered?
Fucking shape.
Go
No,
smiling.
topic! Right, who the
What
fuck
a-
was speaking there?
What a fucking tangent.
It's too far gone now. Should we just keep fucking talking shit about Michael Schumacher? Is Michael Schumacher dead?
He wasn't well.
I remember him being announced that, like, it was announced that he died.
Alright. It was me. I kind of was just wrapping up the Rape of Nanking. I got to the point where I didn't want to talk about it anymore, I think.
It was funny as fuck.
So, I shouldn't be laughing, but so that's the Rape of Nanking. I think that's all I had to say on that. Then the second one I want to talk about is because I'm always going to fucking shoehorn the Mongols in somewhere, is a little bit of the torture methods of the Mongols. And they weren't torture methods necessarily because the Mongols weren't known for that. They were just basically known for all or nothing when it came to destruction. So they would just literally wipe out civilizations. They weren't too arsed about torturing people to get information. It was a case of, we're coming, we're going to fuck you up, and or join us, either or. But they were big on psychological warfare and torturing people prior to going into battles. So they would catapult diseased prisoners into cities that they were sieging to start plagues from within. Yeah, it's fucking bad.
I mean, if I'm riddled with the bubonic plague and life's a misery, I want at least one laugh before I die.
I want to get out in a catapult. You've heard it here first, lads. Special episode, Brad's fucking dead. We just got to shoot him out of a catapult. Just on fucking Town and Field.
But before we catapult him, here's our sponsor, Raid Shuttle Legends.
Joel Schumacher, Denver Public School headmaster.
My shoes, it's related.
Right. So yeah, what the Mongols essentially needed to do with the psychological warfare was they needed people to fear them at first because of their lesser numbers to most of the cities in China and around the Asian steppe. But as their armies grew, they kept these techniques as a way of testing loyalty of their armies that they had, and particularly of like little villages around. So what they would do, which I found quite funny when I was reading it, was they would send a lone Mongol to a surrendered village out of the blue to torture and kill people as a way of testing signs of resistance and loyalty. And if there was any resistance shown by this village, the message would go back to the Mongol army, and the entire fucking Mongol army would descend on this village.
Wait, hold on. So let's just try and get this one straight. So Genghis Khan rocks up to a village full of just fucking fishermen and miners and whatever.
Well, it would be like a messenger at first. It would be like a guy sent.
No, that's what I mean. He rocks up to the village, conquers the village, they surrender.
Oh, do you mean? Oh, you mean before the? Yeah.
So then he sends a messenger out the blue to this fucking already to a village who didn't fight back.
Yeah, basically, who would never fucking achieve anything.
And that's it. Then he begins to torture them, and people resist because they didn't want to be tortured. So then, because they didn't want to be tortured, he comes down and razes this village to the fucking ground.
Fucks him out of ears, like.
Grow up, man. You're only getting tortured.
But it was a way of means of like just instilling fucking absolute terror across anyone in the Mongol Empire, and that was all about. It was just ruling through absolute sheer terror, and that went as far as their soldiers as well. And again, it's not so much as a traditional torture method as it's like, if one soldier out of your group of 10 defected, that they all died. Literally no questions asked. They would just literally execute the entire... I can't remember the name of the faction. There's a special name, and it's like 10 mounted Mongol soldiers, and if one of them like retreated, they would all die. So yeah, that's just a tiny little bit of insight I wanted to give into Mongol, like warfare, because we are going to do a in-depth series on it at some point in the future. So
definitely.
We'll get hyped for that. So shall I do one more, Norm, and then I'll pass it on?
Go for it.
So I wanted to do the talk about the Brazen Bull, which was like
I literally just watched a video on it.
It's fucking so good.
This is Sarah's favourite method of execution.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. I love that she has that.
Well, hers is the Brazen Bull, and mine is death by 1,000 cuts.
Fair. Yeah, like you said before we started recording, Alex, it's more of an execution, but I kind of saw it as a torture method for how much enjoyment someone gets out of that thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it classifies as torture depending on how much someone gets out of it.
I don't know, because I mean, fair enough if it's like what you think, but to me, if it's torture, because that was such an arsey thing to say. Sorry, it didn't mean to come off like a fucking absolute passive aggressive remark.
It didn't at all. It was fine.
Alright, but no, like, to me, torture means it's a prolonged punishment, normally by physical harm.
Aye. But I suppose you could die from torture as well, though. There's some of them were that bad. You would die. Yeah. But I think from looking at this, it's like a fucking long and painful as fuck process. Because when I was reading a bit
like
into
3
research,
minutes minimum.
It takes a long time for it to reach its like, desired heat. So obviously I'll explain what this is first. And it was probably one of the most creative forms of torture / execution I've ever seen or heard of. And it was
credits to you.
Yeah. It was a bronze life-size bull with an entrance to the middle or the stomach where a person could be placed inside. Then a fire would be lit underneath, and then obviously the bronze would slowly heat up to the point where the person would be roasted to death inside. It was created by a guy named Phalaris. I think I've got that right. And he was a tyrant in 500 BC, and I think he ruled in Sicily. And he loved torture. He was a guy renowned for just loving fucking torturing people. This device was specially made for him so he could enjoy the quote-unquote music of someone burning to death.
Jesus.
And what that means is basically inside the bull there would be like these weird concoction of pipes leading up to the mouth, so that when the person was burning to death inside, the screams would come out as like animalistic noises rather than human screams.
Fuck.
So it would come out as like this
Cool.
twisted as fuck loud noise, and obviously this would be, of course, showcased to large crowds because people back then were fucking savage.
What else has gone on though?
True. It's on the telly at 7. Now just fucking public execution. Apparently the inventor of the Brazen Bull showed it to Phalaris and kind of wanted to impress him. So the guy Phalaris was like, "Yeah, if it's so impressive, I want you to get in." So
that's
he
what I
did.
loved about the video.
Obviously, what a fucking idiot for actually getting in it, because apparently he was then burned alive in his own invention.
Yeah.
But then others actually say there was like a counter to it saying that he was actually pulled out but then pushed off a cliff. So either way, he fucking died.
just fucking. Oh, cheers, lads. I thought you were going to leave us in there. Oh, that's alright.
No,
just
no.
walk with us to this
we wouldn't
cliff.
leave you in
Oh,
there.
pushed our cliff. While we're going there. No, they're raising just a bit of a breeze, you know.
Get some fresh air in your lungs. But
Just look onto the horizon. Oh, lovely sunset.
I was just thinking of Denethor falling from the turret.
I love the fact that this guy. I love the fact that this guy was like, that is a really cool invention, mate. I'm really impressed that you've really, really, really done yourself proud. Get in it.
I was just
a proper Dragon's Den style fucking.
I was just thinking of that, the proper sheepish as fuck look on his face because he knows what's coming. You know, you've brilliant fucking idea, innovative. You know me as a person. You know I'm fucking horrible. Now
You've captured your target audience, which is me, a fucking tyrannical, horrible bastard. So
now get in that fucking bronze bull. So either way, the poor bastard died, and fear not, though, lads. Divine justice was served because Phalaris also died in the Brazen Bull.
Oh, good.
Didn't really give us any context as to how in the video. He just said he fucking did. So
You just pissed one night, stumbled in.
yeah, I'm gonna try this. Sounds class.
Do you know
Yeah, it
what?
does look
It's
good.
cold. I'm gonna fucking toast myself up like.
You know, if I was freezing, it's not.
Is that me
not the
burning?
worst way
Is
to
that
go.
me?
Just
Well,
took a
left the gas
pillow and
on.
a blanket in with him.
It's getting rather toasty.
And it was said that the Romans heard of the Brazen Bull and then loved using it because, of course, they did.
Yeah.
Seen it in the catalogue. Yes, get fucking 10 of them.
Aye, seen it in the Argos catalogue. Right.
Ooh, finance. Got good credits got. Aye, finance, lad.
Commodus is reading it. Aye, it's obviously going to have to be finance.
Circle what you want for Saturnalia, boys. Uncle Commodus will get it.
I'll get on finance. On your finance. Fuck's sake.
I'll get it. If you give me the money, I'll then have it.
I'd have your
And
money.
you're going to buy your own.
Just write with a quill. Put this on the tab. Ancient Rome. They are sorted.
That means us.
Yep. Oh.
But I
Could have been worse.
so
He could have
that
been like, I'll get you some Brazen Bulls as long as you get in them.
It sounds like a nice fucking like beef jerky.
Sounds like a pub. If I owned a pub, it would be called the
Oh,
Brazen
definitely
Bull.
aye. There's so many pubs in
Yeah.
England. There's got to be a Brazen Bull. Like
I'm going to Google it. Matter of fact, I'm
That has to be. I mean, there's about 170 fucking red lines.
aye. There's been a lot of red lines in medieval England.
Yeah, there's a pub.
Goldens.
Yeah, that's in the US.
I was about to
See,
jokingly
yeah.
say the thirsty ferret, then I realised I said fucking drink. Probably is any adjective preceding an animal.
There's a Brazen Bull pub in.
Is it Wales? Is it somewhere in Wales?
Is it fucking Canada?
It's in America somewhere.
Or is it?
Small town of America.
I think it's in Nebraska.
Imagine us
That
three
makes
just rock
sense.
up, bumfuck Nebraska, sit down at the bar, order a pint. What you doing here, lads? No, we just love torture.
Oh, it's in Kansas. It's not far outside of Wichita, which I believe is the capital.
Nice.
Mm.
There you have it. If
Anyway.
anyone wants to, nice little fucking pub, isn't it?
Hey lads, if you just want to go, it only takes 1 day and 10 hours plus from connecting from Newcastle upon Tyne to here's USA.
That's not bad. That's not a bad amount of time at all, is it?
Connecting 3 or more stops, and then we've got to fly
Fucking right.
KLM, Delta, and then US Airlines.
No else to do.
I mean, I've got me money.
Free connecting flight.
I've literally got £15 in my bank account, but you know, I'll go on.
That'll do it. Right, so Norm, don't tag in.
Right, I'm doing the Tower of London because they've fucking got loads of like they got like a massive. I think it's a building. It's either a
I've never
building or a
been.
massive room. It's
I've never been to the dungeons. I've been to the Tower of London, but I know it's a big like tourist attraction, isn't it?
yeah, it's a class place. I think they've got like a room dedicated to all the torture devices they had. So a brief history on Tower of London. It was founded towards the end of 1066 as part of the Norman conquest of England.
Is that old?
Yeah, quite old. Like
Shit.
it's been expanded on loads.
Oh well, yeah, but I didn't know like that was the issued date of construction.
The White Tower was built by William the Conqueror in 1078 and was seen as a symbol of oppression in the city of London. The castle was used as a prison from 1100 until 1952. It also served as a royal residence, as well as it served as an armory, treasury, menagerie, and the home of the Royal Mint.
Oh man, it's me dream gaff. When you put your address in, when you sign up for things, just fucking you have to list all of the things in it. The Tower of London, Armory, fucking Royal Palace.
And a public record office, and its most famous use, which isn't in the tower. I think it's in that building I was on about. The famous use was the crown jewels is held there.
Oh shit, yeah.
Which it's fucking locked down. Like,
Is that where it is now?
yeah,
Yeah,
there's I think there's only a certain amount of people that can go in.
I can imagine.
Can't remember the last time. Like, there's on either side there's 2 massive like blast doors.
I love that James A cast a bit about it. Just fucking come and look at your things.
At its peak, while in use as a prison in the 16th and 17th centuries, held within the walls were characters such as Elizabeth I before she became queen, Sir Walter Raleigh, and his wife Elizabeth Throckmorton. What a fucking name!
Elizabeth Throckmorton.
Throckmorton.
Just kind of wait to get married to get rid of that fucking name.
Despite how intimidating it is and its reputation for being a place of torture and death, which was popularised in the 16th century by religious propagandists and 19th century writers, only a total of 7 people were executed within the tower before the World Wars.
Fucking hell, it's an out.
I know you think it was just a building of hell. But
Yeah.
not that bad. It's bad if you wanted the 7.
Pretty sad. We're just fucking playing cards and shit.
Executions were commonly held on Tower Hill, which is north of the castle. In the later half of the 19th century, institutions like the Royal Mint moved out, leaving many buildings vacant. 2 fellas called Anthony Salvin and John Taylor restored the tower to its medieval aesthetic, clearing out many of the empty post-medieval buildings and I think removing them. When you go, it's very, very old. Apart from I think a couple of buildings, because they got a couple of regiments in the.
I've never been in. I've always just like went past it, or I think I remember being on one of those double deckers that gives you the history tours of London, and that was quite good. You sit with the headphones on. That gave us a little bit of like an idea what it was, but
it's really interesting that there's so much stuff because there's like I think there's about 6 or 7 ravens that live there.
Yeah,
and they're like heavily protected because it's like if one of them dies, it's like the start, like supposed to be like the start of the falling of a monarch, that type of stuff.
Holy shit, really? What's it like an omen thing? Holy fuck, I didn't know that. That's
it's
cool.
like if they die or leave, then something bad's gonna happen.
They've got a crazy procedure, haven't they, to
Yeah.
do with like the Queen dying, like how the country learns about it. There's like loads of fucking secret messages sent about and shit.
Because it is another thing. I think it's ravens. It's like when a raven cries, a man dies, and I think
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
related to. They might have been related to Tower of London.
Ravens are fucking cool, man. They're like such a like deep
Yeah,
animal, even though they don't really do
I'm-
anything. They're just like a symbol of loads of
I
ominous
remember
shit.
watching them and they're fucking huge and
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah, they've got that look of like the look through.
Yeah. In the First and Second World War, the tower was used again as a prison and held 12 executions of 12 men for espionage. After World War II, the damage it endured during the Blitz was restored and the Tower of London was reopened to the public. Like again, there's so much you can do. We could do like an episode on the Tower of London itself. It's
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could do such a good episode on London because
Yeah.
the history of London's amazing. Like, it's so layered. Like, it's gone through so much
Yeah.
shit. It's amazing that it's still there when you think of like the fucking plague, the Great Fires, like the Blitz and everything. It's stood the test of time.
as well, what I never knew, 1974, it was bombed. Yeah,
Was it?
injuring 41 people
Oh,
and killing
yeah.
one person. It was suspected to be IRA.
I saw the Discord when you were talking about that earlier. I didn't know
it-
what you were talking about. Oh, fuck.
Definitely probably was the IRA.
It was a strange fucking place to bomb.
Yeah. I see that as a tourist attraction, innit?
True, yeah.
During its lifetime, torture was only used as a fraction on a fraction of prisoners during the 16th and 17th centuries. During this period was a religious upheaval and the need for information. Torture was not used for punishment, but rather a means to an end to gain information about co-conspirators and safe houses. During the reign of King James I, Sir Francis Bacon wrote, "In the highest cases of treason, torture is used for discovery and of evidence." Torture was never permitted under English law. Those carrying out brutal acts in the Tower were under direct orders and authority of the Privy Council and the monarch. Right, so the three main methods that we used was the very famous the rack, which is fucking ugh.
Yeah. Is that where the stretch?
Yeah, Scavenger's Daughter and the Manacles. If you've seen the rack, you know how fucking terrifying it is.
I've seen a picture of the rack.
It's-
It's
I
absolutely
put one in
horrendous.
the Discord.
Oh, is
yeah.
that what that is? Yeah.
Fuck,
man.
It was designed to stretch a victim's body, gradually dislocating the limbs and ripping them from their sockets. It's a wooden frame popped up at a bit of an angle. Your arms and legs are tied to a sort of starfish position to 4 lengths of rope connected to rollers, which are connected to a crank. Every crank turn pulls on the rope, giving you a bit of a stretch. Like, it's just... I think it's like, usually after every question, it's one crank. You fucking...
Yeah, it looks just like one of the most terrifying
Yeah.
things you'll ever look at because it's not even a reconstruction; it's the actual fucking thing in it in the tower.
Yeah. Another name for it was the Duke of Exeter's Daughter, claimed to be an invention of the Duke, a constable of the Tower in the 15th century. So if you were brought into the interrogation, you were first shown the rack and then asked a question or a series of questions. Normally the sight.
Just kind of side eyeing the rack as you're talking. What? I don't know anything about that. What?
It's fucking just. I love how they give you a chance rather than getting straight to it.
Yeah, look, we're gonna fucking stand here and ask you. It's gonna happen.
Normally, the sight of the rack alone was enough for people to surrender and spill the beans. But if you refuse to answer, on you go, son.
Honestly, I can't thank fucking the world enough for being born where I am. Like, just my very existence is so fucking good.
The only reported use of torture on a woman is of Anne Askew. She was a preacher and a supporter of Martin Luther. She was imprisoned for the distribution of Protestant books in 1546. This is where the religious shit links in, because they were fucking. You were fucked if you were Protestant.
Yeah, basically.
She was tortured in the Tower to try and gain information to names and whereabouts of other Protestants. Her body was mangled by the rack, and she needed to be carried to her own trial, where she was found guilty of being a Protestant
Oh shit.
and then put to death. She was burned at the stake at Smithfield, but despite all her pain and suffering, she never gave up any names or renounced her faith.
Oh, fair fucking
Get
play.
on, lass.
I'm snitching fucking straight away.
Yeah.
I'm snitching at the smell of the rat. I'm fucking Tekashi 69 at the thought of the rat.
Fucking hell. Right, the next one, Scavenger's Daughter, also known as the Skeffington's Irons, was designed by Sir Leonard Skeffington, a lieutenant of the Tower during the reign of King Henry VIII. It complemented the rack, as it worked on the total opposite, as the body was compressed and not stretched. I think this one's worse than the fucking...
It instantly sounds a bit worse, yeah.
I'd take a bit of a stretch before that. There's no like a good old stretch before you start your day.
It's not like a good old fucking gun on the rack before you get to
You
work.
could start your day with like, I'll fucking crunch myself up into a ball.
Start my day with a bit of fucking medieval dodge.
And with the rack you get taller.
True, man.
I think it should be the first one. It's like a metal A-frame.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so the head was strapped to the top of the A, hands at the midway point, and your legs at the lower end of the A. The frame can fold and swing, so it brings the head down, forcing the knees up to a sitting position, compressing the body. This forces the blood out from the nose and the ears.
Oh, man.
When I was reading it, my hairs were
making
fucking...
me feel like
ugh.
queasy as... Ugh. It's as soon as blood mentioned, like, I can take like fucking any kind of description of decapitation and people being flung off shit, but as soon as like blood starts coming out of stuff, man.
The fucking just wait to hear the next one. There's another form of it. You probably see it at the Discord. It's got like a outline of a person.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out what that was.
Give you a good old reference. I've seen this in the Tower of London. I remember it to this day, and I remember just staring at it and being horrified, thinking like being in that position.
Obviously, not like most people not be able to see this. It's like someone like kneeling down with like knees underneath the stomach, and then like it's like a vice thing above them, and it's just got like slowly crushing them, and it's like downward.
Yeah, it's a sort of hoop. It's like a fatty A shape. It's got a metal base and a hinge with a screw at the top. So you have to crouch your way in, lay on your knees, and you hunch your back over so that like your back's touching the top of it. So the screw would be tightened, crushing you, breaking your ribs, your breastplate, and dislocating your spine.
Whoa.
But when compressed enough, blood would gush out your fingertips and face, which is...
Oh, man, why'd you have to do it? Why'd you have to
It's
do
horrible.
it? Oh, that's the worst. The fingertips. Oh, no more. Oh, fuck.
That mental image of your fucking fingertips just bust them.
I'm packing. I'm literally fucking...
It's like when you're in the shower and like water runs down your hands, you're like, that. But it's blood.
Palpatine. Unlimited power.
However, it's only briefly mentioned in the documents at the Tower, so the use was probably rare. But I highly doubt that.
Cunts. Oh man, that's fucking awful.
It's fucking rough, like.
Ruined my day.
Alright, so I have the manacles, which is kind of lighter one. It's still horrible, but you know.
This was a nice form of torture.
These are iron handcuffs, worn around the wrists, and you'll be suspended with your feet off the floor. So you just hang by your hands. You could be hung up for a short or long period of time. This causes horrible pain and discomfort. Afterwards, you'd probably find the use of your hands very difficult and very painful. I know how they felt though. Like, can you remember in school when you try to answer a question, everyone's got their hands up, and you have it up for so long that you need to use your other arm to fucking prop it up. And it's like proper.
Yeah.
Like, no.
And then it get the point where you've been ignored for that long.
You just like, you know what, I'm not going to fucking answer it.
Oh, you know what, fuck you. You didn't want my expertise. I'm not putting me on battle.
A person you might have heard of, British people definitely know, since we set fireworks off for him every year. Guy Fawkes, he was...
Our boy, the man.
He was tortured at the Tower as well.
Oh, was he?
It's not known if he was on the rack, but it is suspected that the use of manacles was used to sort him out, because since your hands are a bit fucked and you know, probably can't move them.
Oh, fucking big up G Fawkes. I'll be setting some mid-sparklers off for him in a bit.
It was noticed that his handwriting changed before and after his confession. And
the picture is.
So the top one is like
after the bottom.
It's
Obviously, the second one is just normal writing. The first one is just fucking squiggles. Oh man.
safe to say he was on the rack as well, and I don't think they were gonna let him off easy.
I'll have the rack.
I'll laugh at the rack.
Just stood there stroking your chin, looking between the tree. Fucking worst. Well, I'd take the third.
I could be taller. I could also be a bit smaller.
I might fuck getting out of here alive, but I'll be a bit taller.
Is not doing it at all an option? No.
Nah, alright, fair enough.
Manacles, let's go. Aye, so after a lot of criticism to the torture, because it wasn't only cruel, it was ineffective, as prisoners would say anything to be freed. Because you would. Seeing the fucking rack, you'd be like, aye, the man you're looking for, also me mum, me daughter, sister. Just, I'll give you anything as long as I'm not going on that fucking weird bed. So it was abandoned from mid-17th century.
Fucking hell, that early. Jesus. I didn't think they'd be that enlightened then. I thought it would at least survive till late 1800s Victorian era, but fair enough.
Yeah.
It's instilled a little bit more British pride.
Just a little bit. England.
It's a tiny bit. Britannia.
So that's it. On behalf of Alex, thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening. Our guy who usually says goodbye is gone. I think he's really took the death of the Denver headmaster. Joel Schumacher. He hasn't took it lightly. So obviously he's a bit upset. So appreciate you listening. I'll pass on all of your well wishes to him, and we will see you in the next episode. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. See ya.